Well, happy Tuesday to you. I hope you have had a good weekend and your week is off to a great start. One of the questions that I have been asked um, by youth and middle schoolers over the years is what is my purpose? Why am I here? What is my purpose as a Christian? And kids have a way of just kind of speaking what's on their mind, but I would believe that even adults that have been in the church many years may not clearly understand what their purpose is. We understand that in Scripture, God says we all have a purpose. What exactly is that? What is our purpose here on earth? And it's very clear. God writes out the commandments and he says, love God, love others. And that's not as easy as it may seem. From time that have gone by, we've seen how the Israelites failed at that. The Jews have failed at it. We have all failed to love God and to love others. And we see this definitely played out in our country and in our world today. The love of others is becoming less, and the love of self is becoming a higher priority. And it's really a sad state for us. But I think it's really, really important for us to continuously evaluate where we are in following that command. Are we loving God first and loving God or loving others second before ourselves? One of my favorite stories in the Bible, there's so many of my favorite stories, it's hard to choose the most favorite, but one of my favorites is the story of Esther. And if you recall, she was a Jew and she was kind of a peasant, if you want to say. And the Persian king had decreed that his wife could no longer come in front of him anymore, because when he commanded for her to come and be in his presence in front of all his friends and counselors of the kingdom, she refused. And back in those days, the wife did not refuse the orders of the husband. And in fact, the king and the counselors were so worried about her action that it would play out in other people's lives. Wives would just decide that they didn't need to listen to their husbands. That is when he made the decree that she would no longer have the title of queen and no longer be allowed to come into his presence. And as we read through that story, we understand how the counselors told the king it's time to find somebody new. So he had a decree sent out, and all these beautiful women were brought before him, and he eventually chooses Esther. He had no idea at the time that she was a Hebrew Jew, but she won his favor, and he eventually marries her, and she is in the palace while the rest of her Jews are, living the normal life that they live. And there happened to be a guy who, his name was Hagar, that did not like the Jews and wanted them annihilated and came up with a scheme to have them all killed and tricked the king into actually making that decree. Mordecai, Esther's uncle, heard about it and told Esther that she needed to do something, that she was placed in that position at that time to be able to save the Israelites. Can you imagine the weight of that? You have the responsibility to save an entire nation. But at the same time, she could not just go before the king on her own accord. She couldn't just walk up and say, hey, I need a favor. She had to be called before the king. Otherwise, she could be put to death, because you did not go before the king without being called. But through prayer, fasting, she decided to go before the king and take that risk. And in doing so, her faithfulness to God and her people led to the salvation of all the people from the decree of being killed. We all have a responsibility to tell others about the good news of Jesus Christ. And that can take shape in many different ways. It could be verbally telling somebody about Jesus, evangelizing. But we can evangelize other ways, like just how you carry yourself in life and smiling at one another and treating others better than you would even treat yourself. To love others before yourself. There's times when that's hard, when others have wronged us and we don't feel like loving them at that point. But God doesn't say, well, you disappointed me today, so therefore today I'm not going to love you. He loves us anyway. And that is how we are to love one another. The things that are going on in our country right now are sad, heartbreaking. But as Christians, we have an opportunity to step forward and not be silent and show others love when love may be a very difficult thing to do. So may you love God today, and may you find ways to love others before yourself.